I always say adversity doesn't break you, it builds you.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan. Today on the show, we have Arias WebsterBerry. Arias, what's going on, man?
Oh, I'm great, man. How about you?
I'm good. You literally just said what I have said at different times when I know it's going to be a good conversation. Like, everything we just said should have been recorded. Maybe there are some things that shouldn't have been, but, we'll leave a mystery there. There's a lot of shit that we're going to be able to get into as entrepreneurs, as people have been through tough things, as somebody who is currently kind of grieving about their football team, yourself. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Cowboys last night as we record this, but
in a perpetual state of grief with freaking Cowboys. So, it's nothing new.
But we can talk about resilience and not wanting to kill everybody or yourself because of those things.
Indeed.
But man, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what you do for a living and what's one thing most people don't know about you that's maybe a little odd or bizarre.
So I'm Arias WebsterBerry. I am an entrepreneur, author, speaker, trainer. I'm the CEO of WebsterBerry Marketing. We're a full service digital marketing agency. Got a staff of around 20 people. I also run Ignite Funnels. So I split my time between the two. And I have a innovative AI tool called launchignition.ai. Where our mission is to what we call 100x impact. We're helping to guide 1,000 entrepreneurs to making 100,000 plus in a year and 100 entrepreneurs to make 1 million in a year by 2026. So, yeah, man. Funny enough, something that can I do two things that people don't know about me?
Yeah, go for it.
One, people don't know I wrote a book. So I have a book called Content Cannon. It is all about how to create a month's worth of content for your business in one day. And people don't know about it because I haven't marketed it, even though I have a marketing agency. We'll probably be doing that next year. But something that most people don't know about me is I used to jump rope competitively.
Whoa.
That's a real thing. You can't make that up, right?
I mean, you could, but that would be strange. Like, why would you at that point? What I got to be honest. One of the reasons why I asked that question is to be able to kick us off and move us into a cool direction and also have something that's interesting right up front, like the marketing side of it. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a total nerd about people, and I love to know the thing that's what's the thing that I wouldn't know? And that's one of those things, I probably wouldn't even come up in just a long conversation sitting at a party or something like that, unless you were directly asked, what's an odd thing? Well, there's this.
Exactly.
But all of that stuff also ties into something that's much deeper. I've never had anybody answer that question and that just be the thing where it's yeah, this is that. One day I just picked it up and started doing it and that's it. There's always something that ties back to it and then also leads into what you're doing typically today. So how did you get into that? And how did you move through that, I guess, physically and emotionally and all those things?
I mean, how does it always start? It starts with a girl, right? I was a kid. So I think I was in middle school and there was this girl that I liked and we were walking after school and I was like, so you want to hang out? She's like, actually, I have practice. I was like, practice for what? She's like, jump rope. And I was like, you're practicing jump rope? She's like, yeah, I'm on a jump rope team. I'm like, didn't know they had those. She's like, yeah, you should come if you want to hang out. And I was like, okay, I'm an athlete. And I'm like, I know how to jump rope. Sure. And I went and I was blown away. It was the coolest thing I had ever seen. They were doing backflips and cartwheels and jumping over each other into double Dutch ropes and flipping off of each other's hands inside. I was just like, what the hell is going on? It was ninjas using jump ropes. So I was an athlete. So it was just something that was extremely challenging and highly technical. So I literally was like, yeah, I want to do this. I told my mom and she was like, you want to what? I played basketball, football, stuff like that. And she's like, you want to jump rope? And I was like, yeah. And then I showed her and she's like, okay, I get it. So she signed me up, and it was great, man. We actually went to nationals. So we went to nationals at Disney World. So they had their whole sports complex and thing there. And we actually performed for the Houston Rockets at a halftime show for this thing. So yeah, man, it was interesting. It was want to talk about endurance and precision. It was a great foundation physically for me, for years and years ago.
I mean, it makes sense about being an athlete and trying to push yourself and stretch yourself a bit. I remember hearing, I don't know, maybe in like middle school or even high school, where there were certain football players that were taking ballet classes and stuff like that. And my first thought was like, how does that tie into what they're doing? And then I thought the amount of core strength, the amount of endurance, flexibility, all
Body
of that.
control,
I'm like, yeah, they've got to be able to push another giant fucking human down to get to somebody else and like move in all that ways. And I think it can be really easy to judge, where you go, oh, why would somebody want to do this thing? But if you start to pull out the pieces to it, what a cool thing. And I hadn't thought about any of that. I mean, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, like 10 minutes outside of the city, and a lot of friends and some family in the city. And I saw a lot of that as a kid and never really thought to do any of that. But I was an aggressive skater in high school, where it probably would have helped me have better flexibility and core strength to be able to do that. But I don't think I've ever seen anybody do backflips and all that sort of stuff. But I remember watching some people where I'm like, I couldn't even see the rope. It was just going so fast where I'm like, so if you get hit, are you decapitated?
Oh, Jesus.
Is that the end of it?
It is the worst pain. I remember when I first started and I started getting into real intricate tricks, man, I hit myself once and I had a welt for like a week and a half. Like it broke skin. Like it was terrible. I must have screamed so loud. It's crazy.
I did something like that in my early 30s doing CrossFit. You had to do like the doubles. Yeah. And I was having a hard time with it. And at one point I thought like, well, if I put more oomph into it, maybe I'll do it. And I just like drove the thing directly into my shins and yelped. Everybody in the room was like, the fuck? I was like, I got to take a step outside or crawl or something, but fuck, this hurts.
Yeah.
So being an athlete, doing that sort of stuff, even stepping outside of your comfort zone in a sense to be able to do that, feels like it's part of, it's like the DNA of an entrepreneur. I had mentioned to you, even before we hit record, that I had a conversation with somebody who had recently left a company because the founder of the company just wanted a title, didn't want to actually do the work. And I've seen that happen in different ways. Some people are vocal about it. Some people are not. They have their own traumas and triggers and all these things that just kind of shut them down because it can get really difficult. But if there's passion and there's purpose and all that kind of wrapped into the resilience of all of it, all of those pieces, and those are just a handful of the pieces that kind of sum up what it takes to be able to either run a business or run an organization or something like that. But if those pieces are slightly off, everything's askew. If one of those pieces is missing, you're basically just hemorrhaging energy, hemorrhaging sanity, all that sort of stuff. So talk a bit about not the businesses specifically that you're doing, but the things that you actually have experienced that were maybe some really pivotal moments throughout your journey of business and kind of tying in everything that you're doing that's helped you become more resilient in what you're doing and also adaptive throughout all of it.
I guess if you had to put a through line between some of my stuff in early life and even getting my business started and changing careers and moving, it's all kind of boils down to resilience. Growing up, I faced quite a few significant challenges, including living in over 12 different places before I was 18. Multiple states, multiple cities, my father struggling with addiction, both of my parents being incarcerated at one point. My father passed away when I was just 13, but despite all the hardships, I developed resilience, right? I really had to. And I was really determined to change the trajectory of my course. And, these experiences, they gave me a deep understanding of how adversity could become an advantage, because in going through all those things, I have a perspective that most people don't. I've had to face things that most don't. So I have the muscle and the power, the strength, the internal, or what I say, intestinal fortitude to push through things even when the situation is bleak. I always say adversity doesn't break you, it builds you. And those early struggles led to the foundation of the entrepreneur that I am today.
Yeah. I don't want to skip over that, because one of the major things that I really love to be able to get into on the show is trauma, purpose, but also getting into the context of those situations. There are some shows that are out there that are like, great, well, you've been through all these things. Your dad died, and there was addiction, and there was this, but tell us about your success. Like, wait the fuck, hold up.
Right.
I kind of think like, well, fuck your success for the moment. Let's talk about all these times, because typically the people that listen to the show are the people that are successful in what they're doing, or leaders in what they're doing, either entrepreneurs or within their organization. And they've had these things that they've had to work through, but they're still working through. Coming from any sort of addiction with a family member, especially a mom or a dad, that can seep into your genes. And even if it's not just actually genetic for you, it can still be environmental, where you can start to look at those things where you go, oh, well, shit, when things were tough for my dad or my mom, they would drink like mad. So subconsciously, you think, well, just drink yourself crazy and it'll be all right. You'll be dehydrated the next morning, but you will have forgotten about all of it or whatever. So let's get into some of that shit, because that would have shaped you differently if your parents weren't that way. And the resilience is a thing, like a beautiful silver lining that came from it. But fuck, if we're real with each other, that's never easy to go through that, and probably created your own struggles out of it.
Some people are handed a different set of cards, right? And I definitely didn't get the ones with the aces and the face cards in the deck. My father was a tall, charismatic, good-looking guy with an easy smile, and a way with words. He got a scholarship to Rice University, which is a great university to play basketball. Unfortunately, he grew up in the 80s. And, around this time, we now know that the U.S. government was pumping drugs into, every low income part of America that they could in order to fight communism. That was their excuse for, poisoning their own people, essentially. And he fell prey to it. I'm sure, I don't know how it started, but I'm sure it was something simple and recreational and, fun. And it quickly got hold of him, and he lost his scholarship. And, he struggled with addiction for the better part of, 15 years or so. And, as a result, my mom had to step up and say, hey, that shit's not okay. We have a son, and I need to make sure that he's okay. So while you're doing whatever the hell you're doing, you can't be around. And, him battling with that landed him in and out of jail. And, he wasn't around. And, to my mom's testament, she never told me about any of it. She shielded me from most of that. She never spoke ill of my father. So I never had a negative image of him. I was mad because he wasn't around, and I didn't really understand why. However, I did have the benefit of, I want to say when I was probably 12, 13, my mom basically said, hey, he's old enough to understand things now. He's in high school. So you need to tell him why you weren't around and what you've been doing. And you need to tell him in your own words, and you need to be honest. So, we were living in San Diego at the time. We flew back for, I think it was Thanksgiving. And he and I went and played basketball and had a very long and hard conversation about his life choices. And I could tell it was difficult for him, right? What father wants to lay bare all their failures and misdeeds to their son? But to his testament, he was honest as much as he could to a 13-year-old, and I don't at the time it didn't give me closure. But as I grew older and reflected on the conversation, I understood more. And then fast forward, I want to say 4 months, 5 months, something like that. I find out that he was killed. He was in a altercation with police on the side of the freeway, and he lost his life. And it was tough. And that was my freshman year of high school. So I'm trying to make this transition from being a boy to a man, right? That 13, I'm dealing with puberty and girls in high school, and I was also in a new neighborhood, a new school. So it was a lot of change, and I didn't handle it well. Grades sucked. I was mad all the time. I was an athlete, but even athletics kind of took a backseat because I was just pissed all the time. So yeah, it was a tough time, and eventually I realized that the grades and me being angry and not really caring about my performance in various areas was a reaction or a coping mechanism for everything that was going on. But at the time I was just like, leave me the fuck alone. I just want to watch TV, play video games, and veg out.
Sure. Hard not to, you want to escape if you don't know what's going on. We're also going through, as 13, 14, or 12 years old, whatever, as you start to go through those hormonal changes and start to shift differently, that can be super heavy, man. I'm sorry to hear that happened. I'm also really thankful, at least from a third party perspective, that you were able to have that conversation with your dad a handful of months before all that happened. What a beautiful turn of events, in a sense, where if that were to happen and you didn't have those conversations, you'd be left with more questions. And even though that was 3-4 hours of basketball and hanging out or whatever it was, being able to have some of that and take that into your memories going forward of like, I can tap back into that sort of stuff. It sounds like your dad went through, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to put this, because the systemic issues of it are fucked. To know what happened, where all the drugs were being pumped into the system, of literally all these spaces that are being deprived of resources already, that are like giving fucking drugs to guinea pigs, in a sense. Like, let's just see what happens to them, and treating people like mice. Like, that is totally fucked up.
It's also, I always look at it, it is fucked up, and the people that are in those neighborhoods and in that time had no idea that was, that there was a grander plan and a overarching campaign to coordinate these things. However, at the end of the day, it's still your choice, right?
Correct.
You are making a personal choice to experiment with something. You don't know how you're going to react. You are making a personal choice to do something that may be detrimental to your future, that's obviously illegal, that could, let's say you don't end up addicted, you end up in jail, right? And, or dead, and if you have responsibilities like, a wife, kids, a mortgage, a job, any family members that are, relying on you, well, you're putting this thing before that. And again, I feel for him, because he couldn't have known what he was doing and what was going to transpire. But at the end of the day, every man and woman is responsible for their actions and the choices that they make, right? And, like you said earlier, I could have went down the same path, right? And used that as an excuse, like, well, my dad went around and I'm angry and, drugs are readily available and blah, blah, blah. And, follow the same path. But, I had the opposite response. It was, since I was a kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I realized that, the things that I had saw, the things that I had come across, maybe the people that were around me didn't line up with what I was trying to get accomplished, which was to be a multimillionaire entrepreneur. And, those two things didn't equate, and I really had to choose a path. And in choosing that path, I didn't know the amount of hardship that would come with it and all those different things. But I knew that that path was not most likely going to lead me to this one. So, I had to make a choice, and I did. And, it's made all the difference.
Choices stacked upon choices. And the environmental side of it, economical side, all those pieces can be difficult to like wade through at times. Systemic issues and all those things can just add to that recipe that just kind of makes it harder. But there's no excuse for it, but there can also be justifications made for those things to show somebody grace, without just being like, well, fuck off and like totally judging. But it is all the choices that are being made. I look at people, have conversations at different times about people that I went to high school with. And I'm like, man, I haven't thought of that person in like 20 years. I hope they're okay. And you find out some of them are doing great. You find out some of them are just not, only because of the choices they've made. And you stack those things up. So even tying that into the business, you've had your bumps. You've had, I'm sure, different times where you get punched in the mouth and you're like, what in the fuck was that about? Other times where you're on extreme highs. And there are choices to be made with all those moments. There are people that can take an extreme high and just run with it, and then they fall a lot faster and a lot harder. And other people that don't give themselves enough credit because of the choices they've made to be able to get to that high moment where they just brush it off and just put their head down and keep working on things. So how do you find balance within that, understanding the stuff that you've been through, but also still staying true to yourself and enjoying the highs, enjoying the lows, and not getting pulled either way?
For me, I was actually just having this conversation with one of my students that's in Launch Ignition, and she's also a client, and she's my guinea pig in all the things that we do in my agency and different things we create. So she's the first beneficiary, and she was just reminiscing on the phases that she's seen me through over the years, in me testing various things and being in different industries and starting businesses and them failing, and, some of them making enormous amounts of money. It was one business where we were making 6 figures a month. And then, the next month we were basically out of business. She's been there through all those things. And the thing she commented on it last night was she just finds it interesting how I keep going. In her exact words, she's like, somehow you just keep going. I think it's amazing. She's like, even when things like completely blow up, you just keep going. You get on to the next thing. And I think that's been like, that's how I operate. It is staying true to the purpose and the mission, right? As when I was a kid, I'm like, I want to be a multimillionaire entrepreneur, and that mission hasn't changed, right? The path of the vehicle it's changed several times, but the destination is the same. And when you know your why, right? What's the reason why you're doing the thing? Not the thing that you want to do, but what's the reason why? Well, that has the ability to kind of help you flatten out the highs and lows, and realize that they're not ever as good or as bad as you think. They're never as high, they're never as low as you think, right? Because, I've made enormous amounts of money, and I've lost enormous amounts of money, and I've made it again. I've partied with rock stars and celebrities, and, in penthouses and 40-room mansions where they have a $100 million yacht parked outside. They just, well, whatever. It's a little boat out there. And, I've been at places where I couldn't afford a bottle of liquor. to drown my sorrows, right? And to realize that you're one or two decisions away from any of those, right? Makes you kind of sober up, figuratively, and stay focused, and keep your eye, fixed on the ultimate why and goal.
Good points, man. And along those lines, what's your advice for somebody that's on their path towards self-mastery?
Self-mastery and like mindset is the foundation of it all, right? If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody. You always have to focus on leading yourself. And in my opinion, leading yourself is your ability to be honest and have tough conversations. I have tough conversations with myself literally every morning. One of the part of my ritual is affirmation. It's looking at my goals. But a lot of times, like, as soon as I open my eyes, I'm having conversations with myself. Like, yeah, don't hit the snooze button. You actually have shit to do today. Get the fuck up, right? Hey, you need to go work out, right? Like, if you don't, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to be tired. Like, I have all of these conversations, right? Or when I know I'm not hitting the mark, I actually talk to myself out loud. My girl's like, she's got used to it now, but she used to be like, who the hell are you talking to? Right. And I'm like, I'm talking to myself. Just leave me alone. That to me, that's what mastery, like self-mastery and mindset is, right? Having those conversations with yourself in order to keep yourself true to your mission and your purpose. You are one pivotal moment away from hitting your goal. And you're also one pivotal moment away from asking, why is this happening to me? So it's one of those things where you really have to be dialed in. You have to be focused if you're actually going to get to the other side.
Yeah. Great points. Man, I appreciate you being on today. This has been an awesome conversation. Before I let you go, where can people find you and where can they connect with you?
Instagram is a great place. So Arias Web, ARIASWE as in Echo, B as in Bravo. I'm usually on there posting things. And for all things that I do, all my businesses, all my books, courses, all that different stuff, you can go to ariaswebsterberry.com. It is a lot. It's a mouthful. It's a unique name, so it's not hard to find me online. But Arias, ARIAS, Webster, like the dictionary, and then BERRY.com.
Awesome. Again, man, it's been a pleasure having you on today. I appreciate your time.
Likewise, man. It was a pleasure.